Okay, this will be our material that you need to listen to for the second ticket to class. It's regarding Chapter 8, an infection. Well, here is just a picture of the infection and the bug, meaning the pathogen. Okay, microorganisms and human beings. Infection is still the #1 killer worldwide. More than hemorrhage, more than accidents, more than... You have to remember there are a lot of people in third world countries that do not have the medications that we have or the technology to help people. There are many microorganisms that we find in the human body to be hospitable site in which to grow and flourish because we have the adequate nutrition, optimal temperature, and moist human environment inside. Remember, warm, moist, dark is where a lot of organisms need to work to proliferate. Normal flora. What this means, it has harmless, that they're harmless microorganisms that reside on and in the body, that they're supposed to be there. And I talk about this throughout this lecture. They're found on the skin, in the nose, in the mouth, in the throat, in the intestine, colon, the distal urethra, meaning the closer you get to the outside of the body, and the vagina. Skin contains 10,000 microorganisms. Again, a lot of these are to keep the really bad organisms at bay or away from us. Trillions are secreted from the GI tract daily. Intestinal flora helps to synthesize vitamin K, which is a very important part of clotting mechanisms. In fact, with newborns, we have to give them vitamin K because they were born with a sterile bowel. And until they get food in them, their bowel is sterile. So we give them vitamin K to kick off the clotting mechanism because we don't want them to bleed if something were to happen to them. And that's a state law here. Pathogenic defenses. Some of our worst pathogens, meaning the really, really bad bugs, have been able to change to overtake barriers. Some bacteria produce very thick capsules of carbohydrate. CHO is carbohydrate, or protein that prevent phagocytosis. And phagocytosis is like the Pac-Man where it's going to go eat up all the germs. Some produce toxins that kill our neutrophils, which are our first line defense that we've already learned about. They're the baby white cells are the first defenders that end up showing up there. Well, some of these pathogens have toxins that actually get rid of them. Some proliferate faster than the immune response can attack or fight it off. Viruses hide in cells. They're very sneaky, as we've already talked about. Viruses are very sneaky. However, when moving from cell to cell, identified and antibodies can block a virus by neutralizing the antibodies that the virus has produced. Some viruses change their surface antigens, and what we mean by that is the flu. A couple of years ago, I believe 2 years ago, not last year, the year before, when they gave the flu shot, they said it was basically useless, that something had gone wrong and they did not produce the correct antidote for the influenza virus. And how do we know that? We know that by the amount of the elderly, and usually it's infants. It's on either end of the spectrum that have died from the flu. So infection-causing microbes or bugs or parasites or whatever you want to say. We'll talk about viruses first. And again, very sneaky, microscopic genetic parasites that contain DNA and RNA, unlike bacteria. They have no metabolic capability at all. They use the metabolic processes of the host, and that's why they need the host cell to replicate. They occur when normal inflammatory and immune responses fail. The virus develops in the cell and hides there. And what do we mean by that? Well, remember when we talked about our stress response, that if we don't end up resisting it and adapting, exhaustion occurs. And that's what we're saying. The immune response and the adaptability of the body has failed, and we can end up with disease. After introduction into the host cell, the inner capsule releases genetic material causing the infection. Some surround the host cell and preserve it. Others kill the host cell on contact. AIDS, acquired dysfunction of the immune system. It's caused by the retrovirus, or HIV, that infects and destroys CD4 in our lymphocytes, which we've talked about, which are our T helper cells. And that's what that retrovirus does, and that's why one of the reasons it's so viral. So, viruses do not reproduce inside cells. They must reach the cell and attach to it before it can go inside and reproduce. If you have antibodies against a flu virus, the antibodies can bind to the virus outside of the cells and keep it from attaching and entering the cells. That way, the virus will not be able to reproduce and will not make you sick. And then here is a, let's see if it'll work. YouTube about a virus and how it works. Let's just take a peek. They're not very long.
So let's say that this guy has the flu, could be any flu, and here's a droplet from his sneeze containing, if we move in and take a really close look, you see each one of those little purple things is a virus. And there are a lot of viruses floating through the air, some of which go inevitably up this unfortunate man's nose. How did that guy feel when you ripped off half of his face?
It was interesting because we did it while he was sleeping.
Okay, I am talking with medical illustrator David Belinsky, who designed this video for Xyrus, a research company. So here comes the virus, and it's going to land on one of this guy's throat cells. So notice it's covered with little yellow knobby things. You call these keys, right?
Those are the keys.
Yeah, this is a key, this is a key, this is a key. Okay, if the keys on this virus happen to fit the locks, which are those little purpley stick-uppy things on the surface of the cell, if there is a match, the cell, watch this, welcomes the virus in. And what's this?
This is the welcoming committee. They all interlock with each other, and they pull this membrane down into the cell.
And down it goes deeper and deeper, and that welcoming structure disperses, and the virus capsule bursts, and out comes the secret recipe for how to make more viruses in those little noodly things. So this unsuspecting cell has been tricked into guiding these virus recipes right into its own command center, the nucleus. So in they go.
And they are immediately recognized by this big pink molecule, which is a mini factory.
Yeah, what is it doing?
It threads the nuclear material, the instruction code of the virus, through one hole, and out another hole comes a brand new instruction set.
So it's a copying machine making copy after copy after copy of virus recipes, which then go out of the nucleus to little chefs, those blue peanutty things. They cook up proteins that go back into the nucleus, where they are reassembled into baby viruses, and then out they go. They get covered up and head to the surface, where they get new keys, and then boom, here they come. This is an eruption of virus after virus after virus after. Only one virus entered the cell, but how many came out? Well, millions. So if one virus can produce 1 million babies and do it again and again and again, how come this guy doesn't just drop dead, I don't know, in like 10 minutes?
Well, because you have about 100 trillion cells.
I see. So 1 million viruses is just a drop in the bucket when you have 100 trillion cells. And anyway, remember, you do have your own immune system, which when it sees a virus usually kills it. So while the virus does multiply fast, with any luck your immune system will work just a little faster. So yes, all viruses want to spread, that's what they do, but most of the time we do keep them in check. Most of the time.
Okay. You can go ahead and look at that, and it kind of gives you an idea of how powerful our immune system is. Yes, they copied, millions of them, but we were able to combat that most of the time. I don't know why it's not going on. There we go. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about an infection, and I have another video that I'll probably put on the next video recording. So let's talk about bacteria for just a few minutes here. These do not have DNA and RNA like the viruses. Bacteria are single-cell organisms that have no true nucleus. They reproduce by cell division. Their pathogenic bacteria contain damaging proteins that cause infections. Proteins come in two different forms, our exotoxins and our endotoxins. Our exotoxins are bacteria that produce our Clostridium and Staph aureus. There are a couple examples. These exotoxins can be illicit hemolysin, which destroys red blood cells, leukocidin, which destroys phagocytes or white blood cells. It damages the plasma membrane during bacterial growth. Endotoxins are released when the bacterial cell wall decomposes or dies. So endotoxin causes fever and are not affected by antibiotics. Also classified by shape, growth requirements, motility, aerobic and anaerobic. And so you can kind of see with bacteria why we have so many different groups of antibiotics because of how it's classified. Okay. Maybe we can see it. Let's try it. Let's try this. It's a great little film. It's kind of fun. Nah, you know what? We're going to go on. We'll stop here and go. I'll start it with the next one. Okay? Alrighty.